So several years ago, I volunteered in an animal shelter. And my volunteer job was walking the dogs, running the dogs, wrestling with the dogs. And I absolutely loved my job. In fact, so this is Mabel, so taking her to a meet and greet at a PetSmart. In fact, I can still remember how I would feel when I would drive into the parking lot. Even if I was having a great day, when I drive in and I could hear the dogs barking, my enthusiasm, my excitement dialed up even higher. Absolutely loved, going to work, this volunteer job. This is one of my favorites. This is Goliath. A questionable name, although he had a big personality, so you've got David and Goliath there. And his parents were so proud and excited to his new doggy parents that they did this. Is that great? And actually, would you mind turning the lights off for a break? I just want you to see these slides, and then when the dog pictures are over, we'll turn off the slides. Okay. So the graduation photo. And I liked my job so much. So this was that I took it home. This is Minnie. She is a blind min pin, so miniature pinscher, Chihuahua, and who knows what else, mixed breed. She was actually found wandering around the streets of Sanford, and they picked her up, brought her in. And because she was blind, and also she had a big bulging eye from glaucoma, she was huge, way overweight. She wasn't like one of the cute, charming little puppies, so she just sort of languished there at the shelter. And so I felt bad for her, so over Christmas I took her home for a week just to give her a break. And 4 years later, she's still living large. And she's a great example of resilience. Being blind doesn't slow her down at all. And so I ended up taking my work home with me in a big way. So, and actually, if you could turn the lights up again, thanks. And so here's what happened. And I want to share with you this story because I want you to be thinking of your own version of this, both as an employee, and those of you who aren't employees, when you were an employee, and then also as a manager, HR professional, as a leader, to think about these and how the version of this might be happening in your organization. So I'm all excited, just like all new hires. I'm excited about going to work. And what I noticed, though, is even though I loved my new job, I noticed how cold and unfriendly the staff were. It was shocking. It was almost embarrassing how like socially inappropriate they were, to the point of I would like be walking by somebody and like trying to make eye contact, and they would look by me. Even if like we were the only ones walking in the hallway. I felt like, the sixth sense, I could see dead people. Like, am I a dead person? Like, I don't know, that kind of thing. Really, again, shocking and disappointing. So I mentioned something to the volunteer coordinator. She's like, I know, I've talked to the shelter manager about this. We've lost a lot of volunteers. Great example of how a poor culture sends people packing. And so I just sort of tolerated it for about 6 months. Just a quick FYI, this is why it's so important with your new hires to make it ultra clear. We want your feedback. We want you to speak up. Because, and those of you who are new, you know what that's like. When you're new, you don't want to see negative, you don't want to see high maintenance, troublemaker, and so you just kind of suck it up. Meanwhile, the employer is missing out on lots of valuable information that can make them a better place to work and even improve processes. So finally, after 6 months, I had enough, and I asked the volunteer coordinator, I said, would you mind if I wrote a letter to the executive director about my experience. She said, please do, I would love for you to do that. So I wrote this, it was like a 2-page letter, and in it, I mentioned, one of the things that I do professionally is help organizations in the onboarding process, so onboarding new hires. So I'm more than willing to sit down with you, pro bono, and offer you some suggestions about how to improve the onboarding of volunteers. So I send him this letter, and I don't hear back from him, but I hear back from the volunteer coordinator. And she says, I'll say it's Joe. I said, Joe sent me the letter. Again, I'm so sorry that this happened, et cetera. She said, we're going to bring it up to the employees. And I said, it would have been nice if Joe had responded to me since I sent it to him. And it was clear this volunteer put a lot of effort, thought, and time into this letter. And she's like, oh, well, maybe he's really busy, blah, blah, blah. Weeks go by, no, thanks for taking the time. So I happened to bump into him. And we knew each other just in passing, but we'd never been formally introduced. So I went up to him and I said, hi, I'm David Lee, shook his hand. He goes, hi, thanks so much for all that you do here. So he gets leader brownie points for showing appreciation. I said, yeah, I'm the guy who wrote you the letter about the response. He goes, oh yeah, thank you. I sent it to Susie. And I said, yeah, I know. I really would appreciate it if you had responded to me because I sent it to you. And he paused, and I think at first he was kind of shocked and oh, okay. And let me just stop for a second. Now, if I was working there for pay, I probably wouldn't have said that for obvious reasons. And that's an important takeaway, because that's an example of all the things that happen in the workplace that cause disengagement that employees never say, never give the feedback. But I'm like, hey, I'm working here for free. I'll say what's on my mind. And I was very respectful, but I was very direct. And then we talked a little more, and then he said hey, thanks again for doing that. So what happened? Causes of decreasing engagement. Number one, unfriendly environment, negative culture. So even though I was loving playing with the dogs, wrestling with the dogs, running with the dogs, I was becoming, from day one practically, less connected with this organization. The emotional bond with this organization was already going downhill. I certainly wasn't feeling a sense of camaraderie, which is huge, because one of the biggest sources of engagement, especially for the millennials, is that sense of camaraderie. So cold, impersonal, unfriendly cultures, great way to send millennial talent out the door. I lost respect for management for allowing this to happen. And those of you who are employees or can hearken back to when you were employees know what that's like when you see people behaving badly and it's not addressed. Unresponsive leadership. So here this leader is having somebody showing initiative, showing, I want to help. I want to help you make this a better place. And they don't even bother to acknowledge the receipt of that, let alone thank the person for their initiative and effort. Again, think about that. Is that present in your organization? Where employees hey, we could do things better by doing it this way. And there's no interest in it. No acknowledgement of that. Desire to make a difference thwarted. So I wanted to make the place a better place to work. No interest in that. There's also another piece to this that I'll mention a little bit. Also an interesting moment of truth related to disrespectful parent-child approach to management. So one of the reasons sometimes why we volunteer, think about this in your own experience, is that we want to grow our skill set, or we want to use our talents in ways that maybe on the job we can't. Another FYI, one of the best ways of engaging talent and creating a workplace where people are eager to come to work and make a contribution is find out what their talents are, what their interests are, and is there a way to fold that into what they do. I was talking with a young woman actually in city government who said that she loved it that her current supervisor asked her what she loved doing in her former job. In her former job, she was sort of like the social director. She would create these opportunities for staff to do outings and other social gatherings. She loved that, and it also brought people together. That wasn't part of her job in this new job, but because she loved doing it and the supervisor heard that from her, she got a chance to do that. And so one of the things that I wanted to do and like build on what I love doing and opportunities to express creativity is write stories and do videos to promote the dogs so they get adopted quicker. And there was a particular animal in the shelter that had been on the news. And so I mentioned to the person who was in charge of this animal, like, I would love to do a video of this little kitten, and we can use it as a promo about the great work that the shelter does. That's awesome. So I have my little video camera and equipment, and I'm heading toward the room where this little kitten is, and I hear the volunteer coordinator say, "David, where are you going?" Because it was an employees only room. And I'm thinking, excuse me? So a tone of voice, that a first grade teacher would talk to a student. And it's like, you're talking to a fellow adult with this tone of voice? So let me stop for a second. I share that with you because, again, I want you to think about your own version of that kind of experience. When, as an employee, have you been treated like a little kid, been talked at like a little kid? And or is that present? Do you see that in your company, your organization? Number 6, ongoing obstacles to doing work well, showing initiative and making a bigger impact. So this gets back to what I said, unresponsive leadership. There was also unresponsive management. And what I mean by that was I would do, besides my regular gig of playing with the dogs, I would do lots of photos of the dogs and fun photos, again, to increase the odds that they would get adopted. And I would write stories about and do little videos. And oftentimes, the person who was in charge of uploading them to the website, he would be like Gus in the example before. I would give them this material, and then I wouldn't hear if he got it or not. And so days and sometimes weeks would go by, and finally I would reach out to check because I wouldn't see them on the website. And I want this work that I'm doing, this contribution, to make a difference, because the end result is want the dogs to be adopted as quick as possible. And so that unresponsiveness and or people dropping the ball and not doing their part of a project or process. And so you've got employees who show initiative and are trying to make a difference, but there are other people who aren't doing their part, so they get stymied in their ability to make a difference, whether it's their manager or teammates. And last but not least is cowardly leadership, allowing toxic employees to act out. I'll do the super short version of this. Over, it was about 2 years, my engagement level continued to decline. I still loved my job, but that's all I did. I only did the work that I loved. Like if there was handing out brochures or staffing exhibit booths at events, totally not interested. Why? Because they were clearly not into me, and the culture did not foster bonding to them. but I was bonded to my job. But what ended the relationship was there was a volunteer there who was a notorious bully. And especially the younger employees would yell at them, bully them, etc. And it was never addressed because of cowardly leadership, and also he was a decent fundraiser. And so after about a year there, he acted out toward me. I addressed it, he behaved himself, and then it was either the 2 or the 2.5 year mark, he acted out in a unbelievably bizarre way. I mean, to the point of he was putting this organization at risk of a hostile workplace lawsuit. That off the chart crazy. And they wouldn't address it. They wouldn't address it. And so I said, okay, then I'm not going to be coming here, because I can't, in good conscience, tacitly support your allowing this when professionally I'm all about helping organizations have positive cultures. So if I'm sucking it up and saying it's okay to allow this, then I'm not walking my talk. So again, pause for a second and ask yourself, are there toxic people in your company, in your organization, that are being allowed to be that way? How many of you have ever worked in a place where there was a real toxic person, finally the manager or management got brave enough to get rid of them, and it was like a breath of fresh air, it was like a totally different place? Some of you can relate to that. It's amazing the difference when there's the courage to address that. So here's what I want to ask you to do. If this were longer, I would ask you to be thinking about what you've experienced as over your career of ways of employees being taught not to care. And encourage you to do that in your organization, to ask managers and ask employees, but especially the managers, because the more managers are tuned into those moments of truth, which again is why I told the story, those little moments of truth where managers, employers as a whole teach employees not to care, you start to remove the demotivators, you start to remove the negative.